Fake news. The giant liberal progressive leftist chain letter of 2016.
Just like the average chain letter about a luck or death, the fake news chain letter makes certain hilarious claims and uses certain tactics to get people to believe.
Unlike other chain letters, this one is absolutely true.
Unlike their news, which is fake, ours is true.
Listen to this advice. It's for your own good.
Society's at risk if you don't listen to us.
Such is the emotionally manipulative chain letters like the fake news meme. No one wants nasty consequences for making the wrong choices, but this goes well beyond grade school children forwarding chain letters to remove some make-believe curse. Let's face it. Most of us don't want to be lied to, or made to feel like a fool. It makes us feel betrayed, stupid, or both. We also don't want to be judged as being on the wrong side of history. Even if we know we are not, we have become so scared of being judged as anything from lazy to selfish to racist to undeserving of friends, and everything between and beyond. So if we are told that Amy Bruce is dying and there is a fake news epidemic, and told this by various social network and email shares, which are actually chain letters, we spread them further, because we don't want to make a societal misstep, or even look as if we might have. Chain letters, including the fake news meme, take full advantage of these fears.
This child is being denied healthcare because of lack of funds and the odds are stacked against the family because they are poor. If you don't share this on your email or social network, a child may die.
Zero Hedge, Breitbart, InfoWars, Drudge, and all non-progressive sites are fake news, and they are white nationalist, which means racist Nazi.
Do what we tell you or suffer the consequences.
Listen to CNN, and don't read the WikiLeaks. That is illegal.
Let's delve into this fake news chain letter meme, looking at who started it, who has picked it up and run with it, and why. Because chain letters and all sorts of bullies and liars love to claim they have a monopoly on truth, and they desperately want the general public believing in whatever they say. Even the most harmless yet annoying memes are meant to be spread. But this particular meme goes far beyond spamming.
Clinton said that fake news is
the danger that must be addressed, and addressed quickly.
The danger must be addressed translates to something like, oh no. We on the left are losing our credibility and our power. People are starting to question us, and that is not good. This must be addressed quickly. The phrase, addressed quickly, means dissenting ideas must be censored and stamped out, at any cost. Fooling the public with a leftist chain letter that calls anything from right and center fake news, and lumping them all in with actual fake news such as The Onion, is all part of their desperation to get laughs at the non-left's expense, while strong-arming to win back the power and influence that social cleansing activism and socialism have finally started losing. Left-wing trolls have been churning out hoax stories designed to tantalize and fool the non-left for ages, while trying to keep their own from being debunked. One of these trolls, a professional hoaxer, Marco Chackon, runs a bogus site full of fake news. It is called realtruenews.org. Between that and his contributions to the beastly Daily Beast, Chackon brags about fooling the right with hoax after hoax for 6 months. He admits he found it hilarious, but then he believes he is actually teaching people about who to trust, by making up fake news. Oh sure, that makes sense. Not. The other culprit behind the huge fake news list left-wing chain letter is Melissa Zimdars, a feminist and an assistant professor of communication at Merrimack College in Massachusetts. She prefers to go by the nickname Mish. She put together a list of websites that lumped conservative news and opinion sites in with the likes of The Onion, but conspicuously absent were Daily KOS, Huffington, The Washington Post, etc. She went running scared, deleting her copy of the list and making her social media profiles private when she discovered too many people called her on it. It must make both of these meme originators feel warm and fuzzy inside, knowing Hillary is on board with them.
The glass ceiling of the Javits Center, her supporters expected a triumphant sequel of her 2008 concession speech.
Although we weren't able to shatter that highest, hardest glass ceiling this time, thanks to you, it's got about 18 million cracks in it.
Instead, workers emptied confetti cannons of unused metallic confetti meant to imitate shattered glass, Clinton falling short of her goal.
I know we have still not shattered that highest and hardest glass ceiling, but someday someone will, and hopefully sooner than we might think right now.
Hillary Clinton, of the human-caused climate change, glass ceiling, Trump effect, and the alt-right Putin conspiracy theories, also perpetuates the fake news left-wing whisper campaign chain letter, and adds her own alarmism to it.
The epidemic of malicious fake news and false propaganda that flooded social media over the past year.
Yes, the hyper-racist fake news coming from people such as Simone Sanders and Van Jones and others who believe that Republican means white, which means evil, and Democrat means black, and woman, which means good. Here is the kind of news Hillary Clinton thinks is not fake, and she does not want to censor.
Ran the white nationalist, white supremacist website Breitbart that has a section called Black Crime that has disparaged Jews and women, and
That's the actual fake news. Breitbart is not a white nationalist, white supremacist site, and does not disparage Jews and women. Not unless YouTube itself is guilty of every kind of so-called hate speech due to trolling comments. Trolls hit Breitbart too, and liberal trolls love leaving pro-Nazi comments on conservative sites in order to make those sites appear to be something they are not, hate sites. For all Simone Sanders was shrieking about the title, Black Crime, she never spoke out against the BLM hashtag on Twitter calling for the killing of cops, or the feminist hashtag, Kill All Men. She never speaks out against blacks playing the race card, but she also does it constantly.
we don't need white people leading the Democratic Party right now.
Sanders became irate when the subject was brought up, of the BLM activists who tried to kill a man by beating, robbing, dragging, and trying to fling him off the back of a vehicle because they assumed he voted for Trump, or based on his skin color. Sanders threw a fit because the hair she tried to split in order to excuse the racist protests got debunked, and she could no longer go on shrilling about hate crimes and racist protests being completely different things. The beating proves that one came from the other.
You know, like I heard about the last 30 seconds of it, but I will say, look, Donald Trump did say, stop it. But I would say to the counter of that, where was Obama when people were smashing neighborhoods after all these riots? I mean, he didn't necessarily take a firm stance on getting people to stop. I think what happens is now is, look, people should not riot and cause violence on either side of the aisle regarding the issue. I think it's stupid for people to come out and say racist things and, you know, whatever power for Trump, but they shouldn't do it on either side. And I think there should be a real serious hatch down here of the law and just say, look, stop doing violence upon other people, stop doing violence upon neighborhoods. It doesn't
hate crimes and I'm sorry, Kate. Hate crimes and protesting are not the same things. We cannot normalize this. Carl, a hate crime is a crime that is committed against somebody because of their religion, because of what they look like, because of their sexual orientation. That is not the same thing as protesting.
I don't think Carl is disputing that, though.
Well, he should make it very clear, because what I heard is both people on both sides should just cut it all out. And a hate crime is not the same thing as protesting. We have to be very deliberate about that.
And what do you say to the people who dragged a poor white guy out of a car and beat him?
Oh my goodness, poor white people! Please, stop it, Carl. What I say to people that protest.
Simone Sanders has absolutely no sympathy for the victim, because his skin was just not the right color for her. Hillary Clinton is conspicuously silent on the beating, but she is all too happy to perpetuate the big malicious lie of the mythical white racist problem overrunning the Western world.
I mean, if we're honest, for a lot of well-meaning, open-minded white people, the sight of a young black man in a hoodie still evokes a twinge of fear.
She should speak for herself only, but she and her friends at CNN, NBC, and other mainstream media outlets really want to speak for everyone else. And since they cannot find real white racists, they make them up while denying that real racism and fake news propaganda is coming from their own camp. If they can manage to seduce the public into thinking that non-liberal news and opinions are dangerous, racist and fake news, the easier it would be for them to accomplish their mission.
And deep-seated cultural codes, religious beliefs, and structural biases have to be changed.
Changed back to a society forced to indulge feminists and BLM vengeance in their sick segregationist fantasies. If they didn't really want to bring back the days of segregation and gender pay gaps, maybe even slavery, they wouldn't always be ranting on endlessly about that long past, pretending the battles for equal rights still need to be fought and won today.
I have a lot of experience dealing with men who sometimes get off the reservation in the way they behave and how they speak. Far too many women are still denied critical access to, and as I believe, the advancement of the full participation of women and girls in every aspect of their societies is the great unfinished business of the 21st century. We're either going to be dependent on dirty oil from the Gulf or dependent on dirty oil from Canada. I'm a progressive. I know we can combat climate change. I am a progressive who gets things done. We're going to put a lot of coal miners and coal companies out of business.
And here is Hillary Clinton at her most submissive as she kowtows before and encourages Black Lives Matter.
There has to be a reckoning. I agree with that.
We already had that reckoning in various stages. The results are, we got rid of slavery, segregation, the patriarchy. In short, we got rid of inequality. Everyone of legal age has the right to vote, to education, to work, to equal pay for equal work. No reckoning is needed. Today's activists were never subjected to slavery or awfully unequal treatment because discrimination is against general conscience as well as the law, except of course when it's being done for the sake of affirmative action.
You know, this country has still not recovered from its original sin, which is true.
There is no American original sin. If you're referring to slavery, that institution did not originate in America or with white Europeans at all. Look up ancient histories of all human societies, and you will find slavery in most if not all. The only reason America has not recovered from its guilt over its part in slavery is because social vengeance warriors such as Hillary Clinton, BLM activists and other liberals continue to nag on and on about it, refusing to let go of the distant past and move into the present. They would rather indulge in their sad fantasies where they can be perpetual victims, or heroic champions of victimhood causes that are outdated. It is so much easier to imagine themselves as false victims or heroes than having to face being glory-hungry privileged nobodies.
Your analysis is totally fair. It's historically fair, it's psychologically fair, it's economically fair. But you're going to have to come together as a movement and say, here's what we want done about it. Because you can get lip service from as many white people as you can pack into Yankee Stadium and a million more like it, who are going to say, oh, we get it, we're going to be nicer, okay? That's not enough.
America is already nicer. It has been for a very long time. That is the direct result of getting rid of all the inequality of the past. But Hillary is right about one thing, it is never enough for these activists. Nothing could ever be. Did you hear the contempt in her voice when she was mocking the white people who were charged with being nicer? Did you take note of what she said about the BLM analysis of America being fair? This is what she wants your beliefs being changed to. Not less guilt. More and more guilt over things that happened in the long past that we cannot change and were never part of. Is it fair to expect today's generations to be punished for the sins of the distant past?
So, the consciousness raising, the advocacy, the passion, the youth of your movement is so critical. But now all I'm suggesting is, even for us sinners, find some common ground on agendas that can make a difference right here and now in people's lives. And
for us sinners, she says, as if race determines who is a sinner and who is without sin. Here, she really encourages BLM activists to work on putting together an agenda, as if affirmative action and white-bashing media isn't already enough to appease social revenge.
These things, let's get an agenda that addresses as much of the problem as we can, because then you can be for something in addition to getting people to have to admit that they're part of a long history in our country of, either proposing, supporting, condoning discrimination, segregation, etc.
And most important of all, Make sure the humbling of the white race and heaping of guilt upon them never ends, even though government-sanctioned discrimination ended back in the 60s. Tell people that if they are non-white, they are victims who can do no wrong, but if they are white, they should practice self-loathing to atone for the sins of the past, which education programs consistently fail to mention, holds every human society guilty, not just white males. And after all of that prostration Hillary Clinton did before the BLM activist, what did he do? Accuse her of victim blaming.
What you just said was a form of victim blaming.
Maybe if she stabbed herself in the abdomen and bled out, crying, "Here I die in a blaze of white shame for you," that might satisfy him. But it wouldn't be enough for the rest of the social vengeance warriors. In light of this gynocentric black supremacist misanthropic mission, observe how she views being considered a moderate by other progressives who don't even think she is extreme enough.
You know, I get accused of being kind of moderate and center.
And deep-seated cultural codes, religious beliefs, and structural biases have to be changed.
Even if it takes a fake news, false narrative meme to do it. That narrative being to claim that all news and opinion that does not agree with the staunchly liberal mainstream media must be judged as fake news. And yes, it is shamestream when people who are supposed to be professional news personalities get away with such blatant racism on the job as calling a Trump winner white lash, and they continue twisting everything to fit their poisonous agenda to brand Trump and all people who do not support Clinton as racist, sexist bigots.
This was a white lash. This was a white lash against a changing country. It was a white lash against a black president.
It's now clear that so-called fake news can have real-world consequences.
Yes, it was all the race-baiting fake news from the mainstream media that caused Hillary supporters to go absolutely bonkers when the election didn't go their way.
This isn't about politics or partisanship.
Of course it is. Otherwise the Democrats would have been thrilled about Sarah Palin's brief run in politics during a previous election cycle that Obama eventually won. But there were no exultations from feminist Democrats then about Palin shattering any glass ceilings. If this was not about partisanship and politics, there would be no fake news meme coming from left-wing sources and specifically targeting sources from the non-left with smears of fake news. If this was non-partisan, every media source would be reminding people that The Onion and the Daily Current are fake news, and if they were to paint InfoWars with that same brush, they would also do the same with Huffington Post, New York Times, The Washington Post, etc., and call CNN out for their cameraman pretending to be a protester. For Van Jones' white lash front, they're slagging Trump all day long and shutting anyone off who dares say anything similar about Clinton. Jones was not the only one who couldn't accept Hillary Clinton's loss gracefully. Social vengeance warriors and the majority of the media, which had been pumping out misleading stories containing only part truths and outright lies, designed to make the public believe Trump was a Nazi sympathizer and a misogynist, threw back their heads and howled. During the 8 years under Obama, the divisive identity politics of the screeching cry bullies reached such toxic levels that the people finally had enough. The Trump win was taking a stand against social vengeance progressives with a "screw you." But Facebook, Google, etc. are run by execs who are predominantly left-leaning and very sympathetic to anti-conservatives. Caught perpetuating lies and racism, desperate to hold on to their customers, the mainstream media and internet sites, Google, Twitter, Facebook, doubled down on the anti-Trump and anti-Republican propaganda with their supposed stamping out so-called fake news. But they weren't talking about actual fake news sites such as fakeawish.org, The Daily Current, Weekly World News, or The Onion. They maliciously lied about real news and opinion sites on the non-left, calling them fake news. InfoWars and Breitbart were the biggest targets of this anti-conservative propaganda campaign. Adding to this is the problem of progressive trolls posting pro-Nazi comments on these sites in order to try making them look as if they are full of white supremacists. Sony did something similar with their pre-2016 Femme Ghostbusters movie promotion. They took down rational comments criticizing the movie for its gender politics, but left the trolling misogynistic comments on display. It's a nasty, manipulative, coercive game, and these powerful ideologies want to win our minds, at any cost. Even Snopes, which started out as a site for debunking chain letters, got more and more political with time. Increasingly, it has failed to report left-wing rants and negative stories about Republicans as false, preferring to label them as undetermined or a mixture of false or unproven untruth. At the same time, it readily labels stories from the non-left as false, mixture, or undetermined, but very rarely as true, especially when the story is about something negative coming from a left-winger. None of these sites bother to delve deep and root out every chain letter meme coming from the left for debunking. Riots broke out. People were being beat up. Roads were being blocked. Property being damaged. But naturally, the false stories started rolling in like poisonous bait that some Trump supporters just couldn't resist, wanting to believe. A father of a 4-year-old girl did not die en route to a hospital due to protesters blocking an ambulance. This chain letter has gone around before, same story, different cast. If it had been a real occurrence, the victim would have been named, but as with many memes of this sort, it lacks important details. The silent video showing a woman defecating on a sign falsely claims she is a Trump protester and it is a Trump sign. Not true. The video has no identifying features. It is just a vague piece of footage of some woman being really gross, and there's no way to identify the sign. On November the 10th, 2016, Braden Walter uploaded a video to his Facebook and claimed the
Trump protester drops her pants, craps, picks IT up, and then wipes it on a Trump sign. This is what we're dealing with now.
No, Braden, we are dealing with a media crisis in which the non-left are already being smeared as fake news proponents and conspiracy theorists, and you just added to the problem. Good job. Not. The video was actually posted as a remix on YouTube by Stuffed Pig on October the 13th, 2015, long before Trump's campaign. The scene doesn't even appear to have been shot in America. That should be enough to satisfy anyone that the claim is fake.
And I need Hillary to stand up right now and walk in and sue the United States of America and say,
Some protests were staged. There was at least one CNN cameraman involved in one of these.
So you don't feel like this was a fair election because it looks like Donald Trump won fair and square.
how did he win fair and square? Hillary had more votes. More human beings voted for Hillary. This isn't fair. We didn't get one vote. You didn't get a vote. It's just like back in the day when your vote was 1/3.
So the Electoral College, here's somebody who wants to blow that up. You want to get rid of Electoral College?
Just count the votes. It's ridiculous. Hillary, you're a lawyer. Walk in, go to the Supreme Court. I believe in you, Hillary. I've been to Rwanda. I've been to your hospital in Rwanda. I've seen all the good you've done. I believe in you. Women need you. Minorities need you. I need you. Chicago needs you. We all need you. This country needs you to stand up and walk into the Supreme Court and say one vote equals one vote. What's wrong with that? What's the debate?
You definitely feel his passion. There's other people out here who feel the same way.
Don't
At one point, you had people who were blocking this road. Chicago police moved in. Everything has remained peaceful. And like I said, Don, as you see, thousands of people still continue to gather. But like you heard this man, very passionate about the idea. He doesn't want Hillary to stop.
Yeah, Brian, you know I used to live there, and I know that guy. That's John Gurkovic. He actually went to Africa with me as a cameraman. But anyway, that's another story. All right, thank you, John. Thank you very much, Ryan. I want to get back to Jason. Jason, you have been covering the Trump team tonight.
Lives are at risk. Lives of ordinary people just trying to go about their days, to do their jobs, contribute to their communities.
Chain letters, especially those with urgent messages about politics or health warnings, are often very alarmist and deceptive. This meme is no exception. The real risk to people was when it looked as if Hillary Clinton might win the 2016 US election. A win for her would have ushered in at least 4 more years of unrestrained social vengeance from the left, trumping all over the rights of people who disagree with their politics, and a stranglehold on the media and free speech to the point where even more voices on the non-left would be censored and silenced altogether, and free speech would be a thing of the past. That risk was somewhat decreased by the Trump win, but bullies never lose gracefully. They double down on the ugly and the dishonesty. The cries of racism. The riots. The recounts. Then the enormous smearing of the non-left by way of this super meme, fake news, and you just heard Hillary add her own alarmism to this chain letter.
That gal just so caring and so compassionate. Yes, fake news can have real-world consequences. For example, check out this Huffington Post tweet from November 7th that's still up on their Twitter page. Our pollster polls model gives Hillary Clinton a 98.1% chance of winning the presidency. This fake news from a leftist mainstream publication had the real-world consequences of devastating Hillary supporters who put so much faith in fake liberal news that they couldn't even control or console themselves when Trump won the presidency.
It has to be a joke. I do not believe this is happening. I'm literally about to fucking kill myself, and I'm not kidding. You better fucking fix this shit right now. I literally am gonna die. I need an answer.
And this is just one small example of the real purveyors of fake news. And as far as lives being at risk, well, believe it or not, she's absolutely right about that too. Just one of many horrific examples of fake news leading to the termination of human life is our involvement in the Vietnam conflict. It would take over 30 years for the truth to emerge that the August 4th, 1964 Gulf of Tonkin incident, where the mainstream media with the help of the US government fabricated the story that US warships were attacked by North Vietnamese PT boats, an incident that kicked off US involvement in the Vietnam War. The NSA also deliberately faked intelligence data to make it appear as if 2 US ships had been lost in the fabricated attack. LBJ used the 1964 false flag event to expand dramatically the scale of the Vietnam War by ushering in the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, as well as to rope in much needed domestic support with the Congress and the public. Guys, this was a staged event, a fake news story that never actually took place, and as a result, millions lost their lives, including almost 60,000 of our nation's soldiers. Clinton said that fake news is
the danger that must be addressed, and addressed quickly.
You better believe she sees alternative media as a danger, and you better believe that she wants this to be nipped in the bud as quickly as possible.
Nip it in the bud. Nip it in the bud. You got to nip it in the bud. Nip it in the bud. You got to nip it in the bud.
And what do you think she means by addressed?
It's a danger that must be addressed, and addressed quickly.
Addressed simply means that the dissenting voices must be silenced. Why does she want this addressed so quickly? Because power always wants to silence those who are onto them and are about to expose their deeds for the world to see. She goes on to say,
bipartisan legislation is making its way through Congress to boost the government's response to foreign propaganda, and Silicon Valley is starting to grapple with the challenge and threat of fake news.
That's just a fancy way of saying that censorship is being stepped up in both the mainstream media and on the internet. Hence, Google, Facebook, Twitter etc. are so slap happy with the ban button on anything conservative or non-left, while doing nothing about actual fake news and hate speech coming from the left, especially feminism and BLM.
It's imperative that leaders in both the private sector and the public sector step up to protect our democracy and innocent lives.
This is Clinton's way of saying, suppression of speech that doesn't agree with me and all the leftist worldviews must be stopped. The public and private sector is only just starting to step up and attempt to protect innocent lives from being ruined by social vengeance and social cleansing warriors. This is why Hillary Clinton lost. Social cleansing warriors love identity politics, but everyone else is utterly sick of it. Hillary probably has a much more personal reason to want to shut her opposition up. If the law ever catches up with Clinton and she is eventually proven guilty of everything many people are accusing her of, she would be headed for very deep trouble. So she would hope this chain letter would convince enough people to shut down anyone who brings up anything shady about her as fake news. It just might save her cushy extravagant lifestyle. The same goes for any corrupt politician and media personalities. But it turns out the non-left is not stupid, and people on the sidelines have seen the journalist hacks cranking out a steady stream of concentrated left-wing bias, then the meltdowns after Hillary Clinton lost, and are now calling the proponents of the fake news meme out for actual fake news.
The epidemic of malicious fake news and false propaganda that flooded social media over the past year, it's imperative that leaders in both the private sector and the public sector step up to protect our democracy and innocent lives.
So the woman who voted for a war that was sold on a diet of fake news, a war that killed hundreds of thousands of innocent people, is lecturing Americans about fake news posing a threat to innocent people. Give me a break, Hillary. You're the queen of fake news.
This isn't about politics or partisanship. lives are at risk.
Where was your concern for putting lives at risk when you pushed the fake news that rebels in Libya and Syria were moderate when they were bloodthirsty jihadists? Fake news that led to the deaths and displacement of hundreds of thousands of innocent people and the rise of ISIS. Where was your concern for the 4 innocent American lives lost in Benghazi when you pushed the fake news that a YouTube video was to blame for the attack?
We've seen rage and violence directed at American embassies over an awful internet video.
When Hillary's not pushing fake news to launch wars or cover-ups, she's faking news about being under Bosnian sniper fire to make herself look tough.
I remember landing under sniper fire. There was supposed to be some kind of a greeting ceremony at the airport, but instead we just ran with our heads down to get into the vehicles to get to our base. I made a mistake in describing it.
She claimed she misspoke last week and was sleep deprived when she described landing under sniper fire in Tuzla, Bosnia, something that didn't happen. But CBS News has found several times in the past few months when Senator Clinton used the Bosnia trip to try to show her international experience. December in Iowa.
We landed in one of those corkscrew landings and ran out because they said there might be sniper fire.
Then in February,
the welcoming ceremony had to be moved inside because of sniper fire.
Being lectured by Hillary Clinton about fake news is like being lectured
by Bill Clinton on why we shouldn't commit adultery.
The same goes for the mainstream media. Brian Williams is now lecturing us about fake news. Brian frigging Williams.
As we talked about here last night, fake news played a role in this election and continues to find a wide audience. 2 of our 4 helicopters were hit by ground fire, including the one I was in. I want to apologize. I said I was traveling in an aircraft that was hit by RPG fire. I was instead in a following aircraft.
I mean, what's next? Is Lance Armstrong going to start lecturing us about performance-enhancing drugs? Your whole narrative is already collapsing. The Washington Post was forced to admit that it couldn't vouch for the validity of its hokey Russian propaganda blacklist. The list that their entire story was based on. A list that included even left-wing websites that were critical of Hillary Clinton. That's why they were included on the list. This, after the first fake news list they put out was discovered to be the brainchild of a far-left social justice warrior feminist with a clear bias. You're not fooling anybody. It's obvious what you're trying to do. You're pointing at opportunists who put out fake news to make money and then lumping them in with InfoWars, Breitbart, Zero Hedge and everyone else to try and discredit us because we kicked your ass. You lost the election, not because of fake news, but because your message failed to resonate with the American people, and ours did. And yes, we may make mistakes from time to time. We're not perfect. The difference is that when you deliberately put out fake news, it leads to death and destruction on an industrial scale. It's your fake news that puts lives at risk time and time again. It was your fake news narrative about Islamophobia that inspired the Ohio State University terrorist to ram his car into and start slashing away at a dozen innocent people. Yet the media expressed 100 times more moral panic about the Pizzagate gunman who injured nobody. It was your fake news narrative about hands up, don't shoot that led to violent riots and looting in Ferguson.
We have dead cops because of that hands up, don't shoot lie. We had 2 in New York. We also had 5 in Dallas and some in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, people who were trying to avenge for the life of Mike Brown, who was a thug. There are dead cops because of that fake news story out of Ferguson, Missouri.
It was your fake news about a deceptively edited audio tape in the Zimmerman case that fueled racial tensions across the country. It was your fake news narrative about 1 in 5 women being raped on college campuses that led to numerous fake news stories about rapes on college campuses that never happened. Hoaxes that ruined people's lives.
And this week, police said they found no evidence to support what Jackie told the magazine about being raped and assaulted.
It was your hysterical fake news narrative about Donald Trump being the next incarnation of Hitler that fueled riots and violent attacks against Trump supporters across the country.
There he goes again. These mass protesters are destroying anything they see.
It was your fake news narrative about Hillary Clinton's victory being inevitable that made you look even more untrustworthy than you already were. Most of the press pushing this fake news narrative were the same ones caught in bed with the Clinton campaign before the election. The same ones who pushed the fake news narrative that the WikiLeaks emails were fabricated or doctored.
I mean, I haven't spent a lot of time reading through WikiLeaks emails, but I will tell you this, what we know is that many are not authentic.
Total BS. Yet the mainstream media gave these prestigious a platform to push this fake news narrative time and time again. That was you. Not Macedonian teenagers or Kremlin operatives, that was you. As The Intercept reports, this whole fake news bandwagon was actually launched by a Hillary Clinton supporter called Marco Chackon. Chackon specialized in creating blatantly fake anti-Clinton frauds with the goal of tricking his opponents into citing them so that they would be discredited. He was responsible for fabricating the bucket of losers quote. But these were so eager to demonize Trump that they started circulating Chackon's fake news as evidence that the Podesta emails were falsified. So the same idiots who are now pointing fingers at everyone else and screaming fake news were the first to actually circulate and amplify the fake news that the Podesta emails were doctored. The media's fake news narrative has been completely debunked, yet Google, Facebook, and Reddit are already censoring discussion of certain topics anyway. And isn't it funny how this fake news narrative just suddenly emerged after an election cycle that saw a complete collapse in trust for the mainstream media, with Trump actually making that distrust of the media part of his campaign.
And this crooked media, you talk about crooked Hillary, they're worse than she is.
Do you think they really care about stopping fake news? Or do they just want to silence their competition? Because every indication clearly suggests it's the latter. They're still doing everything they can to delegitimize Trump's presidency. But the riots failed. The threats to electoral college members failed. Jill Stein's recount failed. And just like their new narrative, that the Russian government was to blame for absolutely everything, this fake news narrative will fail.
If we value freedom of speech, exchange of ideas, and we want an overhaul of the mainstream media, turning it from shamestream to an unbiased, non-partisan media, the fake news meme should fail. It hasn't entirely failed at everything, however. The fake news narrative succeeded spectacularly at being a chain letter. And a perfect example of 2016 political propaganda.